Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
We have an important and very unique oversight role when it comes to any issue affecting the liberties and freedoms of all Texans.
A victory for those fighting to change the death penalty sentence for a woman in Texas convicted of murder. And we are live in Fairfax County, Virginia.
At some point, was Mr. Depp's fingertip found?
Yes.
Who found it?
I did.
Jurors hear testimony about the aftermath of Johnny Depp's finger being severed in Australia. Plus,
the results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
A forensic psychologist tells the jury she believes Amber Heard suffers from personality disorders. But first,
see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and yes. It's a fair fight.
Johnny Depp wraps up his testimony on redirect in the multi-million-dollar defamation case against ex-wife Amber Heard. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. Johnny Depp's attorneys finish out the actor's testimony strong, with a jury hearing an audio recording of an intense argument between him and ex-wife Amber Heard, as the multi-million-dollar defamation trial continues in Virginia. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is on the ground in Fairfax, Virginia, and has been in the courtroom for much of today's testimony. Anjanette?
Well, Brian, another busy day here at the Fairfax County Courthouse. Johnny Depp, as you mentioned, he testified for more than 3 days, answering questions about text messages, audio recordings, and his substance abuse issues. The cross-examination was tough, but on redirect, Depp's attorney Jessica Myers asked him questions about an audio recording between him and Amber Heard in 2016 after she had filed for divorce and obtained a domestic violence restraining order, and they discussed the allegations of abuse that Heard made.
It's been going on too long, Amber. And we just gotta stop this. Just gotta stop it.
I don't know how to get my reputation back.
We write a letter together saying that we're gonna take this out of the public eye, that we love each other, and that we wanna make sure each other is okay. Have we had fights in the past? Have we had this or whatever? They already know all that. Don't matter. Here's the deal.
No, it matters. It makes. You have no idea. Every ounce of my credibility has been taken from. And done so in a dishonest way.
Amber, the abuse thing is we've got to deal with that. Yeah. We got to deal with that, Amber.
I don't have any way of my credit is my credibility. You know what?
And why did you put that out there?
I did not. You forced me. Your team forced me to by going on the offense.
I didn't force you to.
I promise. See what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and yes. It's a fair fight.
And when asked after that audio recording stopped playing, Johnny Depp said, when asked by his attorney Jessica Myers, what he said at the end, he said, "Yes, I am. I am a victim of domestic violence." And that's how the redirect ended. There was no recross. It was a very powerful way to end his testimony. Brian.
Indeed. And Jeanette, that last audio recording that we just heard played during Depp's redirect, do you think it gave greater context to Heard's other recordings?
I think it did, and there were a number of other recordings played on cross-examination. Ben Rottenborn played short snippets of some of these audio recordings that frankly made Johnny Depp look incredibly bad. Then there were longer portions of those same audio recordings played on redirect, and I think it gave you, and then he answered questions about them, what was going on at the time. And while there may have been vulgar language involved and things like that, I think it added some information to what may have been going on at the time that those conversations were recorded.
Yeah, and Angela, you kind of touched on it here, that some of the information in the redirect kind of clarified the cross-examination, but do you think it fully explained away any issues brought up by Rottenborn and Heard's attorneys?
You know, I really think that Jessica Myers did a really good job of methodically going through things that they felt were the major points that needed to be clarified. She didn't overdo it. She didn't really get like going into extraneous stuff that may not be that important that could be addressed through other witnesses. She stuck to what she felt needed to be addressed or what the team felt needed to be addressed. And she went through it very methodically and very calmly. So I thought she did a nice job.
Now, the jury has kind of heard Amber Heard through some of the recordings, but she hasn't testified as yet. So before she gets to the stand, what do you think her credibility is at this point?
Well, it's hard to tell. You know, it's all, we haven't heard her side of the story. We are in Johnny Depp's case. We are listening to his case in chief. So we haven't heard from her, and it's hard to tell what the jury might think. She could get up there and say things, and if they formed an opinion about her, they could change their minds. But she's not looking very good right now in many respects, especially on some of these recordings.
Yeah, it seems like an uphill battle at this point, but we'll see how that continues. And we'll stay with us, Angela. We'll be right back. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, our coverage of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial continues. Coming up, a forensic psychologist hired to evaluate Amber Heard testifies, telling the jury of her diagnosis of Heard having personality disorders. Welcome back. More now on the multi-million-dollar defamation case between ex-spouses Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. On Tuesday, Dr. Shannon Curry took the stand. She's a forensic psychologist hired by Depp's legal team. She told jurors Heard suffers from personality disorders.
The results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. One of the hallmark characteristics of histrionic personality disorder is sort of an overly dramatic presentation. We call this impressionistic speech. It really lacks any substance. So at the end, you're left wondering what was just said or what the answer is to the actual question. So that occurred a number of times. And it also represented the quick shifts you'll see between emotions. So she would suddenly be one way, and then she would become very animated or very sad. And when people are displaying these emotions with this personality disorder, there's a sense of shallowness to it. They don't really refer to, I feel this way. They might describe emotions, they might describe events, but very rarely, and Ms. Heard did not say, I feel vulnerable. She never really indicated a vulnerable feeling of her own.
Is legal analyst Matt Mangino, co-host Terry Austin, and Law and Crime correspondent Anjanette Levy. Matt, Heard's attorneys all but walked her off the plank when they tried to argue her experts had contrary opinions to Dr. Curry. But on redirect, we found out they all have to take her for her word, and Dr. Curry doesn't. So is that bad for Heard's case?
Well, I think what's important here is that Dr. Curry had an opportunity to distinguish her testimony and her expertise from these other experts that Amber Heard's counsel was trying to use to attack her credibility. And basically, you know, she informed this jury that not only am I looking at what's been said, but I'm also analyzing what's been said, and I'm also testing what's been said. So although I might have different conclusions than these other experts, it's because I've looked at it with a different lens in terms of analyzing the statements that Amber Heard made during the interview.
Yeah, different lens, I think, is a really good way of putting it. So, Terry, you had some choice words for Heard's lawyers who cross-examined Dr. Curry. What did you think of that cross?
choice words indeed, and I think some of the viewers also had choice words. Elaine Bredehoff is unnecessarily nasty. She argued with Dr. Curry, and Dr. Curry stood her ground. I have to hand it to her. She would not let counsel put words in her mouth. She stood by her diagnosis. She said that there was borderline personality disorder. She said that there was histrionic personality disorder. There was not a diagnosis of PTSD. And basically, she said, look, I'm not talking about domestic violence because I'm not qualified to assess crimes. Very excellent witness, stood up on cross very well.
Yeah. Now, Anjanette, this case is becoming a bit of a battle of the experts. Did you get a sense for who the jury believed more?
You know, it's going to be, we're just going to have to wait and see, Brian. You know, Dr. Curry, you know, she did seem to stand her ground, and she distinguished between her testing and analyzing Amber Heard with these various tests. She said there's a difference between me doing this and treatment providers who meet with somebody and provide medical care for them. So they don't typically, I guess, do testing, she said. So it may be a battle of the experts. I am sure we will hear from experts over on Amber Heard's side, but it's going to probably end up being who the jury believes, Depp or Heard.
Absolutely, Depp or Heard is a major question here. Angela, thank you for the great reporting as always. Look forward to see you soon. Next on Law and Crime Daily, a closer look into the allegedly abusive relationship of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Coming up, the jury hears a first-hand account of the damage left behind in an Australian home after the ex-spouse's argument. Welcome back as we continue our coverage of actor versus actress in Johnny Depp's defamation trial against ex-wife Amber Heard in Virginia. After testimony from Depp wrapped on Monday, Ben King took the stand. He was the property manager at a home in Australia where Depp and Heard stayed in 2016. He testified about finding Depp's fingertip and the damage he discovered in the house after an argument between the ex-spouses.
So I spoke to David Kipper, who was in the kitchen area, seemingly rummaging through a bin. He said that Mr. Depp had sustained an injury to his finger, one of his fingers, and he was looking for the fingertip that it said it had been severed.
At some point, was Mr. Depp's fingertip found?
Yes.
Who found it?
I did. There was a bit of damage down the steps. That a big chunk had been taken out of the marble staircase. On my way down, remnants of what looked like a plant pot or something around it smashed. Walking down into the bar, I could see the damage that Dr. Kipper had told me about. A broken ping pong table sort of collapsed onto the floor, and lots of glass and broken glass on the floor around that area. There were puddles of what smelt like alcohol to me. There seemed like several drinking glasses, a couple of bottles. One was a Stolichnaya vodka bottle. At the end of the bar, as I said, there was a big chunk out of the bar itself, the bar marble top.
Whose job was it to clean all that up?
That was mine. It was mine.
Terry, Heard's attorneys seemed like laser focused on destroyed paintings. That seemed odd to me at points. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think Heard's attorney was trying to focus on all of the damaged property to kind of show that Johnny Depp is a violent person, but that's really besides the point. We know that he can be violent against property. In fact, he has said he's beaten up a cabinet or two. He also was very focused on the photos that Ben King took, and I thought that was unusual. He kept asking, well, how many photos did you take? Who asked you for those photos? Did you produce all of the photos? And at one point, Ben King even said, do you want to look at the rest of them? So I don't think it was important that the paintings were destroyed, and I also don't think it was that important how many photos were produced. The fact is, there are lots of photos, and you can see them all.
Yeah. Now, Matt, do you think King's testimony of the damage at the bar, I'm thinking specifically that little chip on the countertop, do you think that confirms that Heard caused Depp to lose a piece of his finger?
Well, I think what this witness does is really set the scene for what is obviously a violent episode between the two of them. You know, whether the rage was physical in terms of how each of them responded to one another. Certainly, he sets the scene, and Johnny Depp can tell the story. And that's what's happened here. Johnny Depp has explained how he lost his fingertip. This guy helps to set the scene for what it was like that evening.
All right, we'll continue with more Johnny Depp another day. Thank you both for contributing. An execution put on pause. When we come back, the story of Melissa Lucio and how advocates worked alongside Texas state legislators to halt her execution. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Jurors hear the video deposition of a surviving victim of an alleged serial killer in court, as defendant Billy Chemirmir faces a retrial on murder charges in Texas. Though Chemirmir is only on trial for one count of murder, he's accused of killing at least 18 elderly women in the Dallas and Plano areas of Texas between 2016 and 2018. Police believe he would pose as a maintenance worker to gain access to homes and senior living communities. Prosecutors say the victim, Lou Harris, was smothered to death by a pillow in her Plano home in 2018. They say authorities found several items belonging to Harris when Chemirmir was arrested for a separate alleged attack. Police made the connection between Chemirmir and Harris after Mary Bartell was attacked by a man at her home and survived. Bartell passed away in 2020, but not before police were able to interview her about her attacker on video.
He was inside in my apartment, and he said, "Don't fight me, lie on the bed." So I did as he said, because I knew I could not overpower him physically. And of course, as soon as I lay down on the bed, told me to lie down on the bed. Anyway, he just smashed a pillow down hard over my face and my chest, and I just couldn't breathe. After, I don't know, 3 minutes or however long, it seemed longer than that, of course, that he was just using all his weight to keep me from breathing at all. I passed out.
Also in Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals granted a stay of execution for Melissa Lucio Monday, just days before her scheduled execution. Lucio's family, attorneys, and other advocates say the mother of 14 was wrongly convicted of capital murder in the 2007 death of her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah. Several jurors have even said they made the wrong decision in sentencing Lucio to death. Lucio's defense attorneys argue she was wrongly convicted on the basis of a coerced confession after an hours-long interrogation the night of her daughter's death. Despite this stay, Lucio will stay on death row while her case is examined. 2 weeks ago, before the court's decision, Lucio's case was discussed at a hearing for the Texas House Criminal Justice Reform Committee, led by Texas State Representative Jeff Leach, the man who ultimately delivered the news of the stay to Lucio.
We have an important and very unique oversight role when it comes to any issue affecting the liberties and freedoms of all Texans. In this case, one Texan specifically, in Melissa Lucio, when those freedoms and liberties are on the line. Representative Moody and I, Vice Chair Moody, and a few other legislators who aren't here today went to Gatesville, Texas last week and visited Miss Lucio on death row. We promised Miss Lucio, as we hugged her neck and held her hand and prayed with her, Vice Chair Moody and the other legislators, members, and I promised her that we would do everything we can to push the pause button, at the very least, just to push the pause button, because in 2 weeks on April 27th, the life of a fellow Texan is on the line.
Matt, so how much and how strong does this new evidence have to be to get Lucio a new trial?
Well, Brian, I've studied and written about the death penalty extensively. In fact, my book, The Executioner's Toll, examines the death penalty in the 21st century. And it's not surprising to see a reprieve like this, on the eve of execution. What Lucio is suggested is that there is actual innocence. She did not commit this crime, and there's new scientific evidence, and that there was some false testimony that was presented in her case. Now, this is a collateral attack of a conviction after the direct appeals have been exhausted. So this is not the end. This is merely maybe the beginning of the end of this case for Melissa Lucio.
Yeah. Now, Terry, when we take all that evidence that Matt gave us, based on it and the coming out of these jurors pushing for a new trial, do you think if they get a new trial that the prosecution would just dismiss the case altogether?
You know what? It's possible, Brian, but I think the prosecution will probably try to retry the case. The fact is, the trial court has to hold all of these hearings to determine which way to go. They're going to make a recommendation to the Texas Court of Appeals, and they're looking at this new evidence. They're looking at whether or not the medical examiner actually ignored that death could have had other causes other than murder. They're looking at whether or not it was a false confession. They're looking at scientific evidence to show whether or not the child was actually murdered and whether or not the prosecutor suppressed evidence. So I think those are very important questions, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew, Terry, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.